So in terms of changes to the agenda, the actual agenda flow doesn't change, but Clerk Schuler is going to add to item C6, the audit letter and requisite attachments so that the package is complete. And then to item B and item I, to the general public, to both the agenda and public comments, the rules of procedure link, because there's some question as to our rules of procedure. So sure. With those two additional documents added to the agenda, there's no change in the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, public comments pertaining to items on this agenda. There is none, but I'm going to make a statement. We had a request today for additional time to present to the board with no explanation. We applied Rule 12. Clerk Schuler asked me to weigh in since we were within 6 hours of the meeting to the initiated request. That response, applying our rules of procedure, led to me being called crooked, biased, that I lie about policy, that I have limited exposure and bias, that I need diversity training. That's why the rules of procedure are put out there. People have the right to call me whatever they want. It really doesn't bother me. I played baseball the way through college. You want to hear about trash talk and just get in a competitive sport. Waxhaw has rules of procedure. They've had them for years. We update them regularly. We update and adopt them. We have our attorneys weigh in. We adopted the most recent one in August. I'm sorry, in fall of 2018. They're based upon the School of Government and the laws of the state of North Carolina. So we share them with everybody so everybody understands that the town of Waxhaw is open and encourages public dialogue. And since 2016, we offer 4 times as many opportunities to converse with this board than is required by law. And this board, and me personally, damn proud of that. So without further ado, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next item is kind of a fun one. And Melody, do you have some things for me to present or not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, you know, one of the things staff has done is it started, they call Waxhaw 101. They spend 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks going through an introduction to our town government. They go through local law enforcement. They talk about communications and human resources. Matt goes through the plethora of things that are a part of development services, from planning to inspections to transportation, et cetera. We come back to and review parks and rec and community events, public services, finance and budget, and then we reach out to our partner and have Chief Sharp and his team wrap it up with fire protection. The good news here is that that particular course and vehicle was gained some recognition for the town of Waxhaw. We were among 28 North Carolina governments who are in recognition in North Carolina City and County Communicators Excellence in Communications Award. And with that, we have the recognition for the team that put that together. Don't everybody run up here at once. Come on, Matt, Kelly, Greg, Dina, Lisa, Todd, Melanie, where are you? Come on. Congratulations to all of you. Next piece of very important recognition is really something that, gosh, town's 8th consecutive year of receiving the safety award and the police department's 9th consecutive year of receiving the safety award. This is the North Carolina Department of Labor Sharp Award. This is driven by one very valuable employee in this town, Mr. Billy Sellers. He gets everybody to cooperate with him, but my 4 or 5 years here in the board and as a planning board member, we wouldn't get this award as a town if it wasn't due to Billy Sellers and his commitment to safety for the town of Waxhaw. So, Billy. Next item up, Mr. Bjorn Hansen, presentation of the Union County's Critical Intersection Analysis Report. Bjorn, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Mr. Ferguson, I am, stand up or sit?
You can sit, unless you're trying to run away.
No. What I am here to present to you is an update and a report that is currently out for public comment as the result of approximately 5 months worth of work between the NCDOT, Union County, and all the municipalities in the county, including Waxhaw, to update our 2016 critical intersection analysis. This is a report that looks like what's on the right side of your screens. It was completed with assistance from the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization and identified our top 15 intersections across the county that we should focus our collective efforts on to getting implemented. We've done a good job collectively between the towns, the county, the NCDOT. 2/3 of them are actually funded. So we need to refresh our list. And so what we've been doing is working on updating the plan. This is a map of 10-year growth across the county. You see all the green dots, it's a lot of growth. Increased traffic, congestion. We actually have one of the highest crash rates per mile of travel of any county in the country, or not in the country, in the state. I think we're 4th out of 100 counties. It's not a distinction of honor. We have a lot of unsafe intersections, and so we need to focus our efforts in terms of how we apply for our grants through the NCDOT and through the CARTPO. And so
Can you pause 30 seconds? Melody, could you check and see if live stream is up? I'm getting text that we're not broadcasting.
Yep.
okay. Do you want me to hold?
Yeah, just hold a second.
Start. He's working on it.
Okay, go ahead and continue.
Okay. So this is a picture of this room looking at this screen that I'm looking at right now. One of our community meetings that we held several months ago as a part of the outreach process to collect input from the community. Across the county, we had over 700 people provide comments either electronically through our survey, via email or phone calls, or attending our meetings in person. You see this representation across the county in terms of municipalities, NCDOT, Union County Schools as well. Attended this monthly stakeholders meeting where we developed a ranking process, identified intersections, analyzed community input, and then prioritized our list of intersections because we kept to the same number that we did last time, which was 15. Public input was a big part of the process. This is a screen capture of a good public outreach tool that the town also has access to through the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization. It's called MetroQuest. It's an easy website to develop and to share through social media or email to allow people to, just over the space of 5 slides, be able to give a lot of background information as well as geographic information by dragging their little thumbs up, thumbs down, and comments on safety and congestion across the county. We had over 6,000 points of information provided through this process. We also got a lot of policy information regarding their support for locals putting money on typically DOT projects as well as roundabouts, of which we have quite a few in Union County. First question we asked on behalf of Union County was, did you know that Union County doesn't maintain roads? A lot of people don't know that counties in North Carolina don't maintain roads, and the same held true here. Over half didn't know that. Regarding local coordination with the NCDOT to help get projects funded and prioritized, 3/4 supported that if it gets them built sooner, which it typically does. What's the most important issue to address? Number 1 was safety. Number 2 was congestion. Regarding roundabouts, over 90% were comfortable driving through a roundabout. And almost 90% thought that they improved intersections. So we thought that was useful information because anytime a roundabout gets announced, we typically have a lot of people claiming that they're not very helpful and we should spend our money in different ways. So we used a ranking process to evaluate the intersections. We had over 50 that were identified through staff or through the public. Using this matrix, a perfect project would score 100 points. We had no perfect projects. The highest we had were 70. I will say the 2 highest scoring projects were within the town of Waxhaw. And this is not a prioritization of the most important intersections across the county, but they are the highest scoring. From top to bottom, this is a 70, this is about a 40 or 45. 16 to 75 and 75 in Old Providence both scored 70 points. Had high traffic, high crash volumes, moderate amount of congestion, or a moderate amount of truck traffic, and so they were our highest scoring projects. 84 in Rocky River was close behind.
And just a point of clarity for everybody, everything Highway 16 wise was taken off the table because of the enhancements coming to Highway 16.
That is correct. One of the filters we used was, is the corridor funded for widening in the near future? That means you're talking about 84 going into Wesley Chapel. You're talking about 16 along Providence from Weddington into Waxhaw, as well as Monroe Road, although the schedule for that may be changing, as well as quite a bit of Independence Boulevard, 74 going through Union County, where there's improvements as well. You want me to go back to the previous slide?
Yeah. So when you say that even though those that are scored, it goes from the scoring the highest to lowest, that's not an order of prioritization.
That's correct.
Why would those not be?
Because there are different funding sources. Some are focused on safety only. Some of them are congestion. Some of them are based on a cost-benefit ratio. And none of these intersections have been designed or have cost estimates associated with them. So, like for example, 16 to 75, to truly fix it may be a horrendously expensive project, and therefore the benefit to it on a dollars per unit of benefit basis may not be that high, so it may actually drop down. And also depending on which funding source you're applying towards, it may be better than others, or others may be more competitive. It's really depending on quite a few variables. Also, if I were within the town of Weddington, I would say the #1 intersection is Potter and Forest Lawn, because that's their intersection. So, from the county perspective, we have over half a dozen municipalities that are impacted by this list, and so we don't want to say that we are preferring Waxhaw over Weddington. Depends on a lot of intervening variables. Thank you. So what we've done is really tried to make this as accessible to the public as possible. We are aware that a lot of these intersection projects come up as surprises to both property owners and to elected officials as well. And so we've made this map. It's online. Over 2,000 people have looked at it. This map shows all the funded intersections. I'm going to pull down the legend. Starting at the bottom, funded intersection projects have the little barrier. The remaining projects or intersections from the 2016 analysis, which still exist, are these black dots. You have 16 in Ennis, 16 in, I think that's Bonds Grove. Yep, 16 in Bonds Grove are still on there. Problem is you have the widening coming up soon. May not be worth trying to do a project just to have the asphalt torn up within a matter of years. You have a couple on Old Monroe Road, and then you have one in Indian Trail. Then all the intersections that we evaluated are these green and red dots. We went through a two-stage filtering process. The ones that are in red are the bottom half of our 54 intersections, and so they didn't go forward for further analysis. The ones that are in green, we requested detailed crash analysis reports from the NCDOT to help figure out what's the issue at these intersections. And based off of that top half, we further narrowed it down to 15 based on recommendations from not only public input, but also the types of improvements that are likely going to be needed at those intersections, some of which are, like in Monroe, it may just be striping. That's not really a construction project that's appropriate for submitting a cart post, something that would be done in-house by the NCDOT or the city of Monroe. So some projects like that fell by the wayside. But this list of 15 is the universe of intersections that we're looking at across the county. Waxhaw is very well represented. A lot of people going to school out in the Parkwood area, Parkwood School and Potter. It's out in the county, but it would benefit a lot of residents of Waxhaw. You have 75 in Old Providence, 75 in 16, and then Bonds Grove Church and Waxhaw Marvin. And then if you're traveling up to Valentine, also Joe Carr and Marvin. So there's 5 of the 15 intersections in this part of the county. We do have a website with the report. This is what it looks like. I want to thank Kevin Parker for providing this great picture of 16 to 75. I think it really illustrates intersection constraints. And once it's adopted, we'll put in the adoption date. As of right now, it would go to the county commission for adoption, but if any municipality also wants it to be reviewed and put their stamp on it, perfectly happy to do so. But you can click on the hyperlink and read the report. It's not very long, about 25 pages. And the comment period will close next week. At that point, we'll take any comments, revise the report as necessary, and then take it to the county commission in mid-July. What we have done actually yesterday, just like the town, is submitted a grant application to CARTPO for design money to do traffic engineering based design as well as cost estimation for each of these intersections. So if that is funded, we would actually go to and hire a consultant later this year and go through the design process. So we can come back and say, these intersections, the recommendation is a roundabout. For these, it's a set of turn lanes. For this one, it's a signal, and here's the cost to do those. And then based off of that, between the town, the county, and the NCDOT, we would apply for grants to implement those recommendations. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you recall how much funding the 2016 plan brought?
How many dollars?
Just in general, did we get all the intersections analyzed? Did we?
Well, they had about 60 or 70 that were evaluated.
Yeah.
They came up
Narrowed
with a
it
list
down.
of 15,
Yeah.
and of those 15, 10 are currently funded.
Okay.
So, you know, the average is over $1 million per intersection. So if you want to,
And
$10
the
million.
planning and design, which you're going for a grant, that was left up to the local entity to fund that, or?
No, that was funded 80% by CARTPO, 20% by Union County, and we'd have the same situation here. Our application was for $300,000 total budget with $240,000
That's what I was
coming
getting
from
at.
CARTPO.
Okay. Okay, any questions for Bjorn? Commissioner Westlake? Mayor Pro Tem? Commissioner Burns? Okay. Commissioner Lee? No?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a great piece of work. I'm assuming once, if there's any questions at the Board of Commissioners, BOCC, you'll come back to us, and if you need our help explaining the importance of this, happy to do that.
Absolutely.
I think what this does is sends a clear message, based upon the last one. What it sent as a clear message to CRTPO was the fact that Union County has looked at this holistically, and these are the most important ones, which helps them when we're funding these things.
That's correct.
To your point, the different funding mechanisms, that's always an interesting shoot when you're trying to align an intersection or go after funding based upon whatever dollars are available at that point.
That's correct. There's about a half a dozen different funding sources, and they all have different metrics.
Okay. Thank you, Bjorn. Appreciate it. Okay, at this time, we'll move to the public hearing for fiscal year 2019-2020 proposed budget ordinance. I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion from Commissioner Westlake. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
So tonight is an update on the proposed budget for FY 1920, and just to highlight some of the significant items that have occurred so far. Man, if you can advance that slide, because it's not advancing. Here we go. The proposed budget was presented to the board on April 30, 2019, and the highlights included the current tax rate of 38.5 cents, which is no change from the current year tax rate. The 12 funds were included there, and I'm not going to read through those, but those are all the areas that we track expenses. The general fund being the largest, the capital projects fund being probably the second as far as importance for ongoing capital projects. The other things that are listed there, in some aspects, are required by state or federal law to be tracked separately. So things like building inspections, state police drug funds, federal drug funds, and then we have this transportation small projects fund that's set up separately. The general fund budget is the largest by far, $11.8 million, and we had $650,000 that was contributed in the initial budget to the capital improvement plan reserve. So the total of all funds, all 12, was $15.7 million. During the month of May, there were a number of work sessions that included the board, and over a course of 5 meetings, input was gathered, questions were asked, and there were several adjustments that were made that we'll detail here in the next couple slides. Big things that stayed the same. The tax rate at 38.5 cents was unchanged. Their number of funds did not change, and there was no change in the net total general fund budget. So $11.8 million remained in the general fund. A significant item with the capital improvement plan reserve is that it was reduced by $150,000, so it is funded at $500,000. And the total of all 12 funds went down slightly to $15.581 million, which is that reduction of $150,000. Diving into the details, several of the changes are on this slide and a couple of additional slides. 2 police officer positions were funded in the budget as amended. 4 were initially requested for the PD, 2 were funded, which was an additional position from the one that was in the proposed budget. Those will be available for FY 20, and the total cost for the one new officer, the additional officer, is approximately $133,000. So that's everything including salary, benefits, uniforms, car, and equipment. Other items in the PD budget were adjusted, and so the net increase for items that were adjusted up or down is $128,000. In the area of personnel, the board made an adjustment to the merit increase and had a range established from 0 to 3%, which is an adjustment from the 2 merit and 2 market that was presented. So the scale now for merit is 0 to 3%. The 2% market adjustment was reduced or removed, and the board asked for a pay and classification study to begin as quickly as possible, with a goal of implementation in the second quarter of the fiscal year, which would be October, November, December. The study itself is estimated to cost around $14,000, including expenses. It may come in a little bit below that, but that's the kind of the worst case scenario. We did suggest to the board that there be a placeholder amount established in the budget to work toward implementation of whatever the findings are. And in talking with 2 different consultants, both agreed that 4% would be a good number to utilize, and so we have added $150,000 in the administration budget and the contingency line to address future implementation. There was a position that has been previously shown in the clerk's department that was moved to the administration department, and no net change there in the budget amount was made, but the actual position just moved around on the salary lines. There's a couple smaller things that were adjusted since we did have time to get further information in the month of May. In a positive report, we had a lowering of our workers' comp insurance. So it went down in part due to the good safety record that's been maintained over a number of years, and so you do get rewarded for safe work habits and safety across the organization. So $9,500 reduction in workers' comp insurance. On the other hand, we did have a slight increase on the cost of the new positions and equipment that was requested by the board, so $600 was added on the expense side. And then there is a cost also to FICA, NC retirement, and 401k, so that went up an $8,000 amount. Let me restate that. It went down, so it was reduced actually because of the salary changes. So by the reducing from 4% to 3%, that actually goes back to that line, so there's a reduction there on that. The cost of the salary adjustments for the police position was figured into the 128. So. A couple miscellaneous items. Our town hall rent has an item in our lease that has not been utilized up until this year, but we did see a bill that was presented for tenant property maintenance fees, and so we anticipate to see that moving forward. There was an opportunity to reduce our capital expense by implementing part of our server rebuild for our finance software in this year so that we can reduce it in next year, so we're able to offset some of those costs. A reduction of $62,000 came out. And then there were a number of small miscellaneous items in the general fund that we were able to make adjustments on, and so there was about $24,000 that was reduced out of the general fund. So those are the smaller, just miscellaneous things around different lines. This chart summarizes really the overall net effect, and as you'll notice that most all the funds don't have a change, and so you get down to the capital improvement plan reserve fund, and that's where you see the reduction of $150,000, which then impacts the total bottom line of all funds. Also goes down $150,000. So the net change really from the proposed to the recommend, or the proposed today, is a $150,000 reduction. And that is a summary of the budget as it stands tonight.
Thank you. And just an anecdote on the insurance taxes and retirement. Probably won't get a bill until the end of the month because they're negotiating daily on reinsurance due to the hurricane stuff. I mean, that is a very volatile area in terms of insurance. We have one person signed up for the public hearing, Candace DeFinnis. She resides at 8313 Willow Brendan Drive.
Willow Branch.
Willow Branch, okay. That's a CH? I apologize.
No worries. Good evening. I just wanted to take the opportunity to make my comments regarding the budget. In taking a look at the budget, I found that I was surprised that some of the projects were not listed on the budget, being as that we have $1,046,000 budgeted between the PAL bill and small transportation fund. I found it shocking that we didn't have any road projects listed that we would care for within this budget cycle. Road projects.
Would you like some water?
No, I'm okay. I have a cold. It's been like this for 4 days, unfortunately. Since traffic and congestion and safety has been a goal for this board, I would have thought that we would have seen a listing of road projects with the funds that we have included in the budget, so that we could see the benefits as our citizens, for our citizens within the projects that the team would work on. I know that this board has looked at road projects significantly over the last 2 years, and was just wondering why some of the suggested road projects were not included and represented in the budget documentation. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Candace. So with that, we have no additional citizens that wish to comment about the proposed budget ordinance. Any comments from the board itself? Commissioner Westlake? Pro Tem? Commissioner Burns? Commissioner Lee?
No.
I guess then I'll throw the obvious question. We probably need to decide next week how, if any, change we want to factor anything into the budget so we can adopt it and meet our statutory requirements. So we should probably reach back out and discuss that at some point in time next week. I know, thank you to the staff for sending us 36 pages of comments about line item questions, and that's something that I don't know if it made the packet or not, but that is, we asked a ton of questions throughout the series of meetings that Manager Ferguson alluded to, and we had a list of questions that staff provided some good answers to, and we will digest those and determine how we want to add that. So with no further discussion on the budget, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Old business, Parks and Rec Strategic Master Plan.
Good evening. I'm happy to bring back the Park Master Plan. Y'all hopefully had a chance to look at our wonderful book of information. And I'm here to answer any questions and to move forward.
So, you know, technically speaking, I think we should, I would recommend that we follow our procedural rules, since we're here to adopt and at least get a motion on the table and then have the debate where everybody gets to have a chance, or dialogue, everybody gets their chance to comment so we can refine the motion as needed, so we know what we're dealing with. So would anybody like to entertain a motion? I would be happy to entertain a motion from anyone to adopt the Park and Rec Master Plan as presented for discussion.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. So where we go from here is now we discuss. Somebody have a question? No, okay. I don't. So now we will follow the procedural aspect of this and discuss the motion and see what changes to the motion we need to, because right now we have this. We can move from there. So. Okay. Everybody gets their 5 minutes of fame, so to speak, procedurally. We'll start with Commissioner Westlake. Would you like to, what additions would you like to, and subtractions or discussion points would you like to make about the Park and Rec Master Plan?
Well, the only thing that I see is that something that I pointed out last time on the map of the inconsistencies on the map regarding the phasing of the Waxhaw Marvin Road Park was not changed on the map in the book here.
What page is that?
Well, it's the actual map, so that would be
589.
90.
589, 590. So you would like what specific change?
Well, okay, so let me find the page where it has, let's see here. There was a goal list of the phasing of the Horton property and the Waxhaw Marvin Road property. And on that page.
Is it in the executive summary?
I just remember what the situation was, is that I think we discussed phase 2 for the Horton property, and there was an inconsistency of, on the map, it says Horton property phase 2, but on the Waxhaw Marvin Road one, phase 1 and 2 of master plan, whereas the Horton property said just phase 1. So I,
So on the page 89 and 90, Waxhaw Marvin Road, are we comfortable with what is stated? Clear sight of safety hazards and obtain environmental permits, develop site master plan and determine phasing, design and develop phase 1 and 2 of master plan. Is that what you object to?
should have brought my notes from the last one, but do you have the notes of that? There was an inconsistency of the phasing for those two parks. Sorry. Yeah, okay, so on the map, it says the Horton property developed first phase. On the Waxhaw Marvin Road, it says phase 1 and 2. And then, but on the text, whatever page that is on, it had included phase 1 and 2 on the Horton property, not just phase 1. And then, let's see, I'm trying to find that
Okay,
page.
so executive summary, page 9. At the bottom right-hand corner.
Okay, so it's, okay, so on the Horton property, it's talking about the phases.
Yes, ma'am.
But on the map, it's only saying phase 1 of the Horton property. Develop a first phase. Is your map on there saying something different?
It's the same, I'm
Well-
looking at the same one you've got. Are you asking,
The map says build out of master plan elements. And what you have listed here are 3 master plan elements. And I think it looks like he was condensing, or whoever did it, was condensing the map, not putting all that verbiage there. That's how I interpret that. Is that a fair interpretation?
yes, sir, but is
Okay.
that something you would like to see up at the Waxhaw Marvin property as well? Like the general statement?
So the develop a first phase and build out of master plan elements, that's including all 3 phases in that? Okay.
Waxhaw Marvin, you just have it stated differently.
Differently. But we can have it more general like we do the downtown park, if that's okay.
Other comments, questions that you want to add? Commissioner Burns?
I have a just clarification on the programs, when you came up with a 5-year plan and the document, I don't know that it's in here, but the one that you sent, where for programs over 5 years, does that include what the YMCA will take, or is that in addition to your program plan?
But for the Play Waxhaw?
Yep.
So we are partnering with the Y on Play Waxhaw coming up.
Okay. So that can be in addition to what you already have listed as far as the programs?
Yes, ma'am, because they are actually facilitating it. We're helping with give out we're facilitating the space.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Get two comments. One, not to hold up the master plan, but I really think you need to come back to the board with an integrated programming plan to show us how WAA, the Y, Parks and Rec all work together in the next 6. You don't have to have it tomorrow. but because that has an impact on the facility needs that are outlined in here. So if the WAA has a certain agreement with UCPS or the Y does, then the strain on us is less. And so, not that it's a contingency, but something that really needs to happen for this to become alive. That then leads to, at some point in time, we're going to have to do a real operational assessment of this, because the salary and benefits, maintenance and operation, we've got the capital outlay in here, but that warning signal in there, that's why those two, that becomes very critical. Otherwise, we don't know what we can afford to do or whether we can afford to do those programs, okay? The other thing that, and I should have caught this earlier, in your vision and mission, I mentioned that there was something missing at one point in time, and I never told you the word. I don't see the word community development. I see quality of life and community development. I think community development is a key part of what you do. You do it today. Why don't we just call it out and make that a focus item, because that then impacts how we acquire land, how we staff, et cetera on that. So those would be my suggestions for incorporation, but beyond that, I haven't heard anybody raise any serious objections to what we have here. Last but not least, I did send a note. I don't know if it made it around, but I sent it. I don't think we need everything in the master plan. The appendices, by and large, most of them are plans that have been adopted by other boards or other groups or other reports that are the purview of whoever governed those plans. And I don't want this document to be misconstrued that it's adopting a certain plan and then we get bogged down on that. So strong recommendation to pull the appendices out and adopt the master plan. There may be one appendix in there, I think the park classification, but beyond that, most of those were plans or documents approved elsewhere. The 2012 plan, the corridor study, the presentations, that's backup documentation that we would have at the meeting that are already in the meetings. The Waxhaw downtown plan, the TAP report, those are all governed elsewhere. And so they're good reference, certainly have a bibliography, but I don't want the governing of one influencing the governing of another. I don't think we should have them influencing improperly. It's just a thought.
And actually, to your point regarding, at one of the previous meetings, we discussed removing an appendices, however you say it, regarding the train for the Horton property. And I guess I'd like to say that even though decisions maybe have been made by past boards, do not let that detour you to bring it to whatever the current board is and let them discuss it. Okay.
Just to reiterate what the mayor also said, if you look back at a previous meeting that we had regarding this master plan, we did ask for, or did state that we wanted more information regarding partnerships with the Y or with the WAA, and we asked that you be able to break down and also itemize and let us know the cost and doing plans and what was going to come first. All of that was discussed at a previous meeting. So that is something that needs to be looked at and expanded and developed so that we can have that going forward in order to make decisions regarding what's going to happen with this plan moving forward.
We did add those partnerships in the Appendix E in the back to say who our current partnerships are with the cost analysis. Can I get further information about what?
Like if we're partnering with the Y and you're looking for swimming or water, recreation that the community has asked for, is that something that's going to come out of a budget that we have to discuss as a town, or is that something that's going to be developed with your partnership with the Y?
So you're asking if, because the Y itself is organization that will build its building and have its programs within its building. Are you asking if partnerships will happen, like if
If you're
we
saying
want
that
to offer?
If you're saying that the community is interested in water activities, or they're interested in swimming activities, are we going to be responsible for providing those activities? Or is that something that's going to come with the partnership with the Y?
And you don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I was going to just mention that the Y has not presented a plan for their building or for their long-term programming, so we have no way of knowing that at this point.
But this was also stated at a previous meeting that something was going to happen with a partnership with the Y, which is why I'm asking that. So,
They have a timeline to deliver plans for building and programming, and that time hasn't come and gone yet. So Dina really wouldn't know long-term what their facility looks like inside and what exact programs they're going to be providing inside and on the fields. Now, we do know that the fields are soccer fields, and they're designed to be multi-purpose, but the interior of their building and their actual plan rollout will come at a later date. But they will be responsible for programming on that site and in their facility. We will not be.
so with
So to that, I think the best way to say this is we need a strategic partnership, more of a detailed plan as to how we're going to interface and what the potential is.
And what the cost
and
savings?
make sure-
I
well,
think I'm
yeah,
hearing
and the
cost
cost.
savings with our town's citizens and things like that. Okay.
But the Y and the WAA and the Town of Waxhaw need to be unified as much as possible,
Yes.
not siloed or independent. And because that's where we get the synergy and the benefit. So to Mayor Pro Tem's question, we can't determine, we'll adopt a budget, but to Ms. DeFinis's comment, there aren't projects in there. We need data to be able to articulate those first set of park projects. We need to understand the implications, understand completely why you built the budget that way, in that regard. But right now, it's just a number. And that's kind of what we're getting to, I think, right?
I understand now.
Any further discussion? So we gave you a couple of to-dos over the next 6 months, so you're still smiling, that's a good thing. But in essence, this has been a long journey, and you're probably relieved it's coming to end. So with that, we have a motion. Is there any further, we have an active motion. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the Parks and Recreation Strategic Master Plan 2019-2028 to replace the 2012 plan, master plan, with the suggestions made. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Dina.
Thank you.
Mr. White. Next up, establishing goals for Town of Waxhaw's downtown real estate.
Give me a second.
All right. Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, so tonight we hope to be able to facilitate a discussion to further our conversations on downtown real estate. Just to kind of sum it up or review a little bit, because it's been, I guess, about a month and a half now since I've been before the board, but late last year, we engaged Urban Land Institute to help us develop a roadmap for further downtown development. with a specific focus on what we were calling the core parcels, the town-owned parcels right there in the middle of the downtown, being the Niven Price Building at 216 West North Main Street and the parking lot behind it, Dunkin' McDonald House, the water tower, and then the corner, community corner, as many people are calling it, there at West North Main and North Broome Street. And ULI did help us, they provided us with some recommendations for that. One of their key recommendations, which was to, the town should move towards private ownership, returning some of our public sector assets back to the private sector. And we confirmed those, that particular recommendations about the Niven Price Building specifically at the board retreat in January. And then we spent the next couple months starting to outline some goals for that property, how the board wanted to see that redeveloped. And so we kind of put it on pause a little bit since the March 26th work session was the last time that we specifically discussed the goals, but that doesn't mean we necessarily paused the whole process, because in the meantime, staff has been engaging developers and different parties of interest with our view of how the board, in a manner consistent with our view of how the board was moving at the end of March. So things haven't really been at a standstill, but certainly I think now we're at a point where we need to further that conversation and be able to get us to some next steps. Just to review what the ULI guiding principles were, I think these are important. I pulled these from the ULI TAP report, technical assistance report, and I thought it was important to highlight them again because they set an important context for us. But I also kind of realized after looking at them again that they're very consistent with what this board identified as some of the key goals for the Niven Price property back in March. So I thought that was interesting that they were pretty consistent there. I briefly touched on this. The ULI did recommend starting with the Niven Price improvement and sale through an RFP, and then using those proceeds to fund subsequent phases of a broader downtown redevelopment initiative to include parking improvements, community space, and civic improvements as well. So I think that brings us up to speed again. But these were the goals that were established by the board in the March 26th work session. And as I mentioned, they're pretty consistent with the ULI's guiding principles. They're pretty broad, but I think that was helpful for us as we got out there and started looking at other towns, what other towns have done, as we got some unsolicited letters of interest. So, we were able to kind of look at them in context with where we thought the board was. And so tonight, I've got some things I can show you. We can go more in depth on some examples I have here from other towns, but really I think it was important at that work session. We were still having a discussion about, are we going to sell the building through an RFP or through a development agreement, or are we looking at a different method? And the direction that I understood was that, first let's have the Board of Commissioners define what our goals are, and then staff can help lay out a roadmap of how best to get there. And with that in mind, just having these bullet points here, it's our understanding that the board is looking for some level of control over how this property is redeveloped. If you're gonna guide what the uses are beyond everything that the UDO will allow in the downtown zoning districts, it's a development agreement would be a good route to go. If you're gonna try to use this property to as a catalyst for developing infrastructure or any sort of to impact the area around it, again, a development agreement is what would be the route that you would use to achieve that. And so that's how we've kind of proceeded in our conversations with folks. Over the past couple months, we've had a lot of interest. We've had several in-person meetings. We've had a lot of folks just inquiring by the phone, and we did receive one, as I mentioned, unsolicited letter of interest. And it was interesting that in that letter of interest, I mean, it was for the offer was for the appraised value of the building, maintaining the parking as public. A lot of the things that I think we were going to be looking for. And then it asked the town for some skin in the game, as we've discussed, which would be part of a development agreement. The town would have to be a partner in some way, looking for some interior renovations, some improvements to the facade, and some parking improvements. So it was interesting to see that even before issuing an official RFP, that we received something that kind of helped validate that approach. So. I think I'll stop there before we go. Are there any questions? Is that consistent with where the board is?
It's a good summary of our previous conversations. So thank you for that. As I listened to you talk about goals, and quite frankly, we're a little bit all over the map in what we gave you. I mean, we want control. Infrastructure, et cetera. I kind of narrowed this down as I stepped back and looked at what you had, and thank you for giving us everything. I have, in my mind, or Waxhaw should have, take advantage of what you've done with downtown Main Street, got recognition for it, and build upon that. And so I narrowed it down to at least 3 goals. Prioritize economic development. Whatever we do, we prioritize economic development. That's increasing the foot traffic, that's increasing the sales tax revenue, that's increasing the types of businesses that will bring the foot traffic down there. So that gets to, some uses fall in there, some uses don't. I mean, you know, some things within the town center are allowed that would not increase foot traffic. So that to me is a priority goal. The second one is maintain the look and feel of downtown. It's a combination of placemaking, it's a combination of the experience, and it's a combination of the integration with the community in that Main Street area. So there's implementations, a development agreement, and all that stuff gets to the piece parts, but maintaining that look and feel is absolutely critical, because that's what you've built as a success model. And then from a fiscal standpoint, my personal opinion is fiscal is the third one. We'll let you, I would let you recommend the most appropriate way to dispose of the real estate, for lack of a better way to say it. But we want to maximize the revenue. We want to minimize the risk to Waxhaw. We want to make sure whatever we do is feasible in a fairly quick manner, and use the appropriate sale tool that gets that. And then also under the economic development prioritization, I did put improve the infrastructure, because whether you're talking corner lot or whether you're talking Gibbons Price, the infrastructure needs to be improved, you know, all the way down. So, but those 3 big buckets, driving to the little, is where I started. So, who would like to make the next set of comments? Commissioner Burns?
I agree with Mayor Maher with the economic development part, but also, and I know we can't say so much about the offer that we did get, but when looking at that offer, what the full price was, but then when I was reading all of the things that the town would have to put back in, what was the limit for that? Was that 500,000? Is there a limit that the town?
50% of the
50%,
total project.
okay. All of those things that are on that offer seem to be pretty high price things. So I don't know that, I'm sure you're going to have to look at all of those, but on that one particular one, I would be very interested in knowing what that cost would be, because those pretty significant changes.
Sure, that makes sense, certainly to start vetting some of those things. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to? Commissioner Wesley? Mayor Pro Tem?
I just think that you're off to a good start in the information that you provided to us tonight and in trying to capture exactly what we were looking for in being able to maintain some form of control over the building, what it looks like, and not just opening it up to anything to be there, and also leaving the parking lot, public. Things like that are important. And I think once you move forward with what you have right now, and then just some additional comments that have been made tonight, that, we're moving in the right direction, basically. So, thank you.
Commissioner Lee?
Nope.
What haven't we given you? What do you?
So, thank you. I would say that really for us to be able to take a next step, I had everything on here. Oh yeah. So the three buckets, the broad buckets you put it in, that's helpful, and I think you're right. I think that definitely kind of pulls everything up in it, and it lets they're broad enough to where it kind of encompasses a lot of the questions that were originally posed in those dozen or so bullet points that we left off with from last time. I think for us to be able to move forward, just need to first confirm. I think that the board would be ready for us to draft an RFP with those broad goals established, and then kind of put it out there and start vetting. So that question one, and then two, if so, I do just want to confirm that the project area would be limited to, is it just the building, is it the building and parking, is it the building and the sidewalks? That's one thing that would still, I think, need to be more clearly defined.
So board, consensus on ready to move forward with an RFP?
Yes.
So we have consensus on RFP. So second thing, do we have consensus on that the RFP will look at the property in totality?
Yes.
Greg had something to say.
Yeah, I would suggest that the board consider leaving that as open-ended as possible, and let me elaborate a little bit on that. While the stated goal is to sell the building and to consider what happens to the parking lot that's associated with the building, one consideration for the board would be to perhaps allow there to be language in the RFP that would open the door for other town-owned properties downtown. And going back to what Kurt referenced with the ULI study, there was a phased approach that was recommended to address the building, the parking lot, the corner lot, and then move on in a sequence. There is some indication that there would be developers who would be interested in doing a phase one and a phase two approach at the same time, and simply addressing Niven Price building by itself might not rise to the level to be of interest to them. While if there were an opportunity to buy and redevelop Niven Price and perhaps suggest some development opportunities for the corner lot, that might be more attractive. So one consideration for the board would be to think about whether you want to kind of leave the door open for that to be also part of a proposal that could come back for consideration.
So is there an appetite from the board to consider all of the downtown property within the RFP? I guess the question becomes, you wanted clarity, and so how do you write an RFP leaving the door open? I don't think, let's see if there's any resistance to all the properties on the table, right?
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. So write the proposal to get people responding to the RFP, and if you Need a garage door opener? Let's open it up. I mean, you know, use whatever you think is the right mechanism based upon what you're doing, but we didn't want to put any limits on it, is the point. I don't sense, right? No limits? Okay.
Thank you.
Does that help you?
That's helpful, absolutely.
So that's all you need?
That's what we need.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Before we move on to new business, let's take a quick 5-minute recess. We will be back at 7:40. We're going to get going here in a minute. Earl, if you could sit down. I've been waiting to say that for a long time. Okay, next item up, we're into new business, Waxhaw Marvin Multi-Use Path Feasibility Study. Kevin Parker and Matt Hubert, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. As Mayor said, we're here to talk to you about a feasibility study for the Waxhaw Marvin Corridor Road, specifically the location between a 10-foot multi-use path and a 5-foot sidewalk on the east or west side of Waxhaw Marvin Road. The limits of our study began right about where North or West North Main Street turns into Waxhaw Marvin and extends up to Gray Byram Road. That's about the limits of the study. It's about a 3-mile stretch, give or take. So I don't know if you all remember, but back in 2018, December 2018, Kimley Horn performed a study of the entire corridor itself. That stretched all the way up to Bonds Grove Church Road, and the parameters of their study consisted of analyzing intersections, looking at the pedestrian inputs and outputs, and gave recommendations for how they think that corridor should look regarding transportation improvements to intersections and bike ped improvements. What Kimley Horn came up with was a 3-lane cross-section, as you can see on the bottom of the screen there, that consisted of a 10-foot multi-use path and a 5-foot sidewalk. In their study, they said, or they suggested, that the 10-foot multi-use path be located on the east side of Waxhaw Marvin Road and the sidewalk be located on the west side. It was kind of an anecdotal suggestion that they didn't really dive too deep as staff did into that recommendation for those path locations, which is what initiated our study, was to take a look at each parcel individually and come up with a recommendation for where we believe these paths should be located. The parameters of our study, like I said, was taking a look at each parcel and taking a look at the physical existing conditions that would affect the constructability of a 5-foot sidewalk or a 10-foot MUP. And these physical elements were obstructions that could be a ton of trees, big rocks, a shed maybe a fence, utilities, drainage, and even if there were even existing paths or not. The second parameter was to see if it was developed or not developed, and a follow-up on that was if it was developed, how close were these structures to the existing, proximity-wise to the existing right-of-way. So all this kind of played into right-of-way acquisition. We looked at the number of parcels on each side as well as the number of street crossings as well. The results of our study was, as shown here, the east side, the reason that the east side is approximately 0.7 miles longer is because at the very north section of this corridor, the west side is owned by Union County right there at Gray Byram, and the east side is still in the town. So that's why we have an extra about 0.75 miles of frontage along Waxhaw Marvin Road. The west side had an existing 1.3 miles of sidewalks or paths. There were only 8 street crossings on the west side compared to 9 on the east. And when it came to the existing conditions and the constructability of it, that's what we used as our average physical element score. We gave each of those obstructions, drainage, utilities, a score from 0 to 1, added them all up and averaged them out. So a 4 represents better, easier constructability for each of these paths. And the west was overall less physical elements that would affect constructability, and as well as less developed by about 33%. So staff's recommendations was based on those results, and you can see our justifications here, that the multi-use path, the 10-foot multi-use path, be located on the west side of Waxhaw Marvin Road. And it really, really boiled down to acquisition of right-of-way. Right-of-way acquisition is about 50% of construction costs, and with fewer parcels, easier constructability, 1.3 miles of existing paths already. It's a lot, it's pretty easy to say that it'd be a lot easier to be constructed on that west side. We wanted just to present this to you, again, just for informational purposes, get your feedback, kind of show you what we've been working on. But our next steps would be to kind of finalize and amend this report, take your feedback. If you'd like me to look into anything further, absolutely, I will. Anything else you'd like me to consider, I will. Eventually adopt this study and use it for our future development and our future planning. So ideally, we would like developers, as they come in, to implement these paths as they construct. And be happy to take any questions and feedback as well.
Questions? Commissioner Burns?
No.
Did a great job.
No,
Thank you. I think maybe you had it in here. I think at some point in time in the very near future, it would behoove us to understand what the cost of this is going to be in the corridor. And probably sooner rather than later, at least for the, not the north, but I guess the midsection, if they're going to do the bridge and all that stuff, and that's sooner rather than later. Because that'll be monies that the town will have to figure out where we're going to get them from and coordinate with DOT. That would be my only suggestion in terms of we need to start putting this into our capital improvement plan. The other question is, maybe this is more directed towards you. I know there's not a plan here, but how you coordinate, how would this be coordinated with the Kluge at Kensington and Waxhaw Marvin? Because there's a lot going on there.
Absolutely.
So.
And so this is kind of one of the reasons we felt it important to bring this question to a head, so that we can already go ahead and program how this will interplay with existing development, the proposed construction. It helps then us really fill in the blanks that we didn't have answers to, in addition to the corridor study itself. So yeah, to your point, this will continue to be, in everything we do with new development, with our own plans and with DOT, a key piece of information that everybody's going to need that helps us get to those particular answers in what's going to cost where and when is it going to cost. To the intersection itself, the sidewalk is ideally at the beginning was something I wanted to try and get programmed in, but they're so tied up with just getting the bare minimum right-of-way done, it really was going to over-encumber a process that's already not come to a satisfying conclusion. But as we are engaging in the bridge design, these are key elements as well. I think there will be a quick follow-up as we adopt this with how that all comes out, and you'll see us probably sooner rather than later detailing the impacts that are going to have and what the town's role is going to be.
All right, well, thank you. I mean, consensus is go forward, so go forward.
Oh,
So,
very good.
thank you very much. Next item up. I don't think you guys are going to stand, are you? Traffic calming program revision.
So you're not done with me yet.
Kevin and Matt.
So, again, this is kind of just informational, show you what we're kind of thinking, get your feedback, and just kind of take it from there, show you some next steps, and take it from there. We wanted to maintain the current traffic calming mission, which was keep traffic moving efficiently, but also maintaining the safety of the pedestrians and the residents living in these corridors. And we wanted to keep the seamless, if there is an issue, we wanted to keep the resident involvement. We wanted them to be able to continue to initiate these studies where we come out and evaluate these issues. So we wanted to keep, so again, we wanted to keep the mission the same. So really no changes there. Currently, though, the existing traffic calming policy is pretty extensive, a little ambiguous. There's a lot of material that's kind of obsolete, a lot of supplemental type information that could be really just background information that doesn't really apply to an evaluation or necessarily implementation of this policy, just kind of background stuff. And it really didn't have thresholds or standards to make recommendations on whether we install or don't install traffic calming devices. Our restructured one would like to condense and make things a little more concise, create these finite standards for implementation and recommendations of these traffic calming devices, and as well as establish a finite payment method between the town and residents or HOA. Some of the similarities between the restructured and the current one is the initiation is essentially the same. If a resident has a concern, he emails me directly or any of the engineering department, which I will be the main individual performing these evaluations. But we wanted to keep that the same. We wanted to be resident, board, mayor, town manager, police chief even, or fire and EMS services can request these traffic calming studies if they believe there is an issue. We wanted to keep the public involvement the same, let the residents know what's going on, why, give us their feedback, and let us provide our recommendations. Some of the traffic calming measures are the same. We took some of them out, as you'll see later on. And we changed a little bit of the evaluation method and of the parameters. Mainly, we changed it from a 24 hours traffic evaluation to a 72-hour traffic evaluation, where we take traffic counts and speed data and all that jazz. I mentioned the payment in the last slide. Currently, it says this implementation of a traffic calming device is of no cost, and it doesn't say of no cost to who. So currently, what we implemented, or what our idea was, that it would be split 50-50 between either HOA in the town or the residents who brought up the concern in the town. Yes, ma'am.
Can I just say, I'm not very comfortable with the idea that we're going to ask our citizens to pay more money if you want a safe road.
Sure. Again, this was just
Yeah.
our original thought.
That just sticks out to
appreciate
me
the
as not something I'm sure we want to go down that path.
Anybody else have any reaction to that? I guess there's no other reaction to that. I tend to agree. We got a vehicle fee. We've got other funds. We should be, safe road should be our purview, not dependent upon whether or not an HOA has a reserve fund. I'll put it that way, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Knowing how well some do and don't do reserve funds, I don't want to put safety at that risk. The other thing, and I'm just going to put it out there, we're supposed to be doing policy. I personally don't think the Board of Commissioners should be out recommending traffic calming on intersections. That's your purview. That's if the HOA or a resident wants to bring it forward. Our job is to make sure we support the policy with the budget behind it. Likewise, in reading this, I don't think you should be bringing it to us for determining yay or nay as to whether or not the request is valid. To us, it's about, hey, you guys did the study, we need to do it. Okay, now do we have the money to do it now, or where do we get the money from, et cetera. To me, it's about budget to support the infrastructure that you bring forward all the time. So, but that's just my perspective. We deal with policy and funding and not with traffic design and engineering. So, I mean, that's just my opinion.
No,
Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I would agree.
I agree. We do have funding. We have the vehicle fee. Needs to be used for the citizens.
Move on. Okay, this is just kind of the parameters we use to evaluate these studies. So these are essentially our minimum thresholds for implementing a device. A lot of it, we looked at other towns. Charlotte, we used a lot of CDOT's thresholds. They've got a lot of studies backing up their information. The main threshold is number 6 there, where you see the 85th percentile must be speeding with 5 miles per hour over the posted speed limit, which is a lot of what the data will show. That's going to be the main threshold to decide if we install or not install. I doubt the only roads that we are responsible for besides Kensington are all residential streets. They shouldn't be getting 5,000 vehicles per day, but we just like to keep that in there as, yes.
So let me ask you a different kind of question. So one of the things we've uncovered is that we have a little bit of gap in road turnover in terms of speed limits. And so 5 miles over the posted speed limit would be 40 miles an hour. So how do you back out and implement this policy, recognizing that
So we
is a gap that we had left over from past years?
So we do realize that some subdivisions, they don't even have speed limits posted as you enter Prescott, for example. So our initial 25 is going to be 25 mile an hour as the
recommended.
Exactly. Thank you. So, and then the whole implementing the townwide speed limit is a work in progress, and that's maybe for a different topic of discussion, but that's a work in progress.
You've thought through how you're going to do it. That's all I was asking.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So these are some of the traffic calming devices that we'd like to use. That top left one is called electronic radar signage. It shows you how fast you're going, gives off a camera flash, takes speed data, and all that jazz. The top right, you have a mini roundabout, which is useful at intersections, causes you to slow down to go straight or veer right or left. I'm pretty sure you're all aware of the speed cushions in the middle there, the speed humps. Bottom left is chicanes, and bottom right is chokers. Staff believes that horizontal methods of traffic calming are a little more efficient than vertical or just a simple stop sign, because then it just becomes enforcement at that point. So our initial go-to would be to use horizontal measures of traffic calming opposed to speed cushion.
For those watching who may not understand the difference, can you briefly explain the difference when you're saying horizontal versus vertical?
So vertical, speed cushion.
Okay.
Physically up and down, as opposed to the bottom left or the bottom right, where you have narrowing of the roadway itself. Tight quarters cause people to slow down a little bit, so that's the reasoning behind that. Again, our next steps would be to take your feedback, if any, amend this accordingly, adopt this, apply this to any new traffic calming evaluation requests that we may get, and a little bit down the road, we would like to kind of eliminate this problem altogether and try and implement this in the design and review process before any construction even begins. So this doesn't even need to be, again, that's way down the road, but ideally that would be.
I think that's fantastic.
That's a goal. Other than that.
I mean, no more developer speed bumps?
Nope. Other than that, that's.
So I think we gave you some input.
Yeah.
And hopefully you got those down. Anybody else have any additional input? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, general public comments. Pat Kiddo. Okay. Edwin Elam.
To the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, to the commissioners, to the town clerk, town manager, and to the town attorney. I have but one question tonight on behalf of the people's business. Is this body sure that it is following the rule of law and you as a body have not broken any statutes, ordinances, your own ethics policies, or laws against the people? Thank you very much.
Thank you. James, and I can't read your writing for the last name, Atkins, regarding the Nivens Price Building. Welcome, James.
Thank you. Good to be here. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for hearing me today. Come to you as a concerned business owner. The Nivens Price Building is being marketed for sale, as we discussed, as you guys discussed, as an agenda item earlier in tonight's meeting. I ask that you consider the owners of the businesses and the impact to the current tenants of the building and their business. As you may imagine, not knowing whether to invest in my business at its current location, while the current landlord, Town of Waxhaw, contemplates the sale at the very building my business resides. Or should I invest elsewhere to a more stable and definitive future? As you can imagine, that can be very stressful on a business owner or any person, generally speaking. I believe that's unnecessary. It is a building owned by the Town of Waxhaw. It's a public building, in essence. I see no reason that honest, timely, and open communication with the tenants of the building, I see no reason that should not happen. So hopefully that's not a double negative. I think regular, honest, open communication should happen with those tenants, business owners in that building. I think the future of that building, and whether it's sold to a developer who may decide that that's not a business they want in that building. So I think the Town of Waxhaw should consider potentially grandfathering in some way if the tenant should want to be grandfathered into that building, and make that a condition of sale. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Town leadership reports. Manager Ferguson?
Got a couple items tonight under the Parks and Recreation banner. There is a new program guide coming out in July, and so be on the lookout for that. And then fun days in the park are every Wednesday starting tomorrow until mid-August, and different locales will be used and times, but they're always going to be on Wednesday, so that's just something to look out for. You see a pop-up library also up there that's representing something that we're working on. It's kind of a new event that hadn't happened in the past, so that's coming soon, June 17th. In addition, we have self-defense class for teens coming up on June 17th, and something also around safety is stranger danger and awareness, and there's still room in both classes for additional people to register, so see the website for that, and that's in partnership with Up-Level Martial Arts. So those are coming up as far as resident safety and awareness for teens and for adults. And then a good news item, here's our adult trip to visit the Catawba Queen on Lake Norman. The sightseeing tour is full, so there's a big response there. That's going to happen on June the 25th, and it's almost an all-day trip, but that is sold out. And so it's something that we'll try to look at again as an opportunity, but good response there, and that really indicates that programming is really desired for all ages in the town, so good to see. Just as a side note, on another topic, from a personnel standpoint, we're in a position now of having all of our open positions filled, with the exception of a senior planner position that's still to be filled. Not all of those positions have started yet, but offers have been made and accepted, and so we're moving that process along to try to get the planning department back to full staffing and get it back to being able to take care of all the development that's going on in town. So good news note there. And that's all.
Any questions for the manager? Commissioner Westlake? Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to thank Greg for his leadership and our great staff that we have. We opened up with a really full agenda, recognizing a couple of awards we've had that have been in addition to others that we've had over the past year. A very detailed budget that was put out. We'll be having a CIP budget coming out later, where we will discuss some of the things that were mentioned in a public comment. We've had Park Master Plan passed, and updates and transparency from some of our other departments, along with the updates of events that are coming up and the staffing. So I thank you, Greg, for your great leadership for our town.
Just a thank you to all the department heads and all your hard work, and with the manager, Lisa, and the budget and all that has gone forth and helping us to move ahead.
One quick thing. Got a note from the YMCA. They want to make sure everybody understands that they are moving ahead. They're identifying and engaging potential community partners who have common goals in serving the community. Read that as partners in the build-out of the full footprint that they have out there. They've identified and are engaging the initial group of volunteer board members to provide their time, talent, and treasure to the endeavor. The advisory board is still on target to be named in June, and their first meeting, I believe, is in August. And they are working with town staff and others to develop the starter kit of programs that the Y can begin to offer now and engaging the broader community. And so they just wanted to be a part of the update as to the progress, and that comes from Steve Bowers, Executive VP of the YMCA of Greater Charlotte. So with that, any questions about that? If not, at this point in time, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session. And I would ask that the attorney join us, and then we'll evolve from there. We have a couple of things that we have to clean up first. So can I entertain a motion to go into closed session?
So
To
moved.
discuss personnel-related issues for GS 143.318.11A.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? regular meeting, or whatever date this is, June 11th regular meeting of the Waxhaw Board of Commissioners.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?